Life is tough. From the bottom of the Mariana Trench to the peak of Mount Everest, organisms have adapted to thrive in some of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. And life gets even tougher when you're so small that everything is gigantic. And yet, some animals not only manage to survive in such conditions, but are completely comfortable. In this video, you will find out which bacterium is capable of surviving up to 121 degrees Celsius, which insect can freeze and then just continue doing what it was doing before it froze, and, most importantly, if people suddenly disappeared from the planet, which species would be the first to take over the Earth? When heated to 121 degrees Celsius, most bacteria die within a few minutes. But not this one. This bacterium, called Thermus aquaticus, lives in hot springs and can withstand up to 121 degrees Celsius for at least several hours. It's unclear how long it could survive at this temperature because no one has ever studied it for more than 6 hours. Scientists believe that it's better not to disturb this bacterium. In its natural habitat, it feeds on silicon and sulfur, which oozes from the rocks of hot springs. As you may have guessed, T. aquaticus doesn't need much. Its DNA doesn't even have introns, non-coding sections of DNA that make up half of the human genome. All the genes of this bacterium are expressed. That is, they produce proteins and carry out their function. Scientists used the heat resistance of this microorganism to create a polymerase chain reaction, PCR. Now, this method is used in almost all areas of science to amplify DNA, and this microbe is the record holder for survival in low temperatures. Halomonas venusta can survive at temperatures below 18 degrees Celsius. At the same time, the optimal temperature for it is 30 degrees, and it becomes active at a temperature of 4 degrees Celsius. The bacterium falls into a state of suspended animation at temperatures below 18 degrees. It's like a deep hibernation, and when the temperature rises above 25 degrees, this microbe quickly comes back to life and starts growing rapidly. In nature, halophiles live in salty lakes and soils where, due to high salinity, the water doesn't freeze even in winter. And when the temperature rises, these microbes quickly take advantage of the situation and start multiplying. But bacteria aren't the only organisms that can survive extreme conditions. Take, for example, the tardigrades. These microscopic animals can survive up to 150 degrees Celsius and even in outer space. However, we won't consider them since we need insects for our top. This insect can be frozen and then just continue doing what it was doing before. We're talking about a beetle that can be frozen for several years and then return to normal. The thing is that in nature there are several ways to deal with low temperatures. Some organisms, for example, accumulate certain compounds in their bodies that lower the freezing point of the liquid in their cells. Thus, instead of water turning into ice, it turns into a kind of syrup that doesn't freeze even at very low temperatures. Other creatures fall into a state of suspended animation or cryptobiosis, when all the processes in the body slow down and the organism seems to be dead. Well, actually, it's just in a dormant state, and the supercooling method used by the Tenebrio molitor is something in between. When it gets cold, this larva begins to actively pump its body, driving the air out of it. Then it produces special proteins that act as antifreeze and prevent the remaining moisture from freezing. And finally, the larva falls into a state of suspended animation. All this allows the beetle to survive even after being frozen for several years. In 2008, scientists even managed to freeze and then revive a larva that had been in the pupa stage. After being defrosted, the larva continued to pupate until it turned into an adult beetle. It lived a full life, mated, and laid eggs. If people suddenly disappeared from the planet, which insects would be the first to take over the Earth? Of course, these are ants. There are over 12,000 species of ants today, and they're found everywhere from the Arctic to the equator. Ants are very different, but all of them are highly organized insects that live in large colonies. And, most importantly, ants are super strong. An ant can lift 10 to 50 times its own weight, and together they can move objects 50,000 times heavier than themselves. Just imagine what these little creatures would be capable of if they had human technology. But let's get back to the main thing. If a radical climate change were to occur, would ants survive? The answer is yes. Ants have already survived 5 mass extinctions, and they'll definitely survive ours. They're well adapted to any conditions. For example, leafcutter ants living in the Amazon rainforest are threatened by dry spells and floods every year, and they have learned to survive under such conditions. If it gets too dry, they move to the depths of the forest where there's more vegetation and it hasn't dried up yet. If the river overflows, ants build dams, and when the flood recedes, they immediately begin to rebuild their homes. That is, in millions of years, bacteria and insects could develop intelligence and create a new civilization. What do you think? Write your versions in the comments.